use that experience for is to realize that every newcomer, not just refugees, every newcomer to Canada, whether they came through a family class or international students or anybody, has that newcomer experience. And I used my own experience to then share with, for example, I went to Surrey, BC, and I had a town hall with a group of refugee youth, and they were asking me some tough policy questions, but eventually what they really wanted to know was, it's really tough, are we ever going to get out of this? And my message to them was yes, 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 because, and I was able to mix the proof that I had for them in terms of getting out of the journey of integration and settlement was that I said to them, you know, Canadians will help you along the way, and the government will also help, because the government doesn't just talk about that. We invest so much in settlement and integration. Last year we invested $664 million. $664 million just on settlement services, not on refugee resettlement and all that, that's extra. And that was already a $76 million increase from the previous year. This year the number is $700 million, so again another increase. That's because we feel that yes, it's very expensive, language programs don't come cheap, job training and all that, but the outcomes are so much worth it. Not just the economic outcomes, but the social outcomes. And these are people who will give back 10 times over, 100 times over. So why wouldn't we make that initial investment? And so that's the thing that I'm so proud of. Wherever I travel outside of Canada, the Germans, the Swedes, everyone is saying, even as late as 2 days ago, the Australians and the New Zealanders and the Americans and the British were in Ottawa. We were hosting them, immigration ministers and security ministers. And all they wanted to talk to me about was, how do you guys do settlement so well? We're not perfect, but one of the reasons we do it so well is because the government doesn't do it. It's Canadians who do it. No, seriously. But the second reason is because we put money behind the principle that you know, integration is important, and so, you know, you can say all that, but if you don't put the money behind it, you won't get there.
Speaking of not perfect, there are a lot of sponsors in the room who I know would want to bend your ear, because although we know that Canada does invest a lot of money in settlement and has, you know, taken this innovation of private sponsorship to new heights, it's not enough for a lot of us who are sponsoring, and there's frustration with backlogs, etc. What's your response to them about what we can look forward to in terms of improving on our private sponsorship process?
Great question. I get this, I think it's my favorite question, actually. No, I'm just kidding. It's a tough question because you don't want to seem like you're hindering in any way the generosity of Canadians. We want to encourage that. But I think what happened prior to us coming into office was that, and in all fairness, objectively speaking, the previous government did something that I think wasn't fair. What they did is they kept taking applications, knowing full well that their cap had already been reached. So they would take applications from people to make them feel good temporarily, but disappoint them over the long term. We're doing the opposite. We don't want to take an application unless we know that we will process that application quickly, and that we can look the person in the eye and say, this is how long it's going to take. Now, we inherited a backlog. The backlog coming in for privately sponsored refugees, I'm talking about the cases that the Conservatives got, but just kept going from year to year and not really being processed. We came in and that backlog was 47,000 privately sponsored refugees that would have just continued year in, year out, not being processed. We came in and we said, okay, we have a moral obligation to land these people and connect them with the families that sponsored them. And we're making great progress. So we have reduced that backlog by 43%. So moving to next year, that backlog, actually now the backlog is about 21,000. And by end of next year, early 2019, we should eliminate that backlog, number one. Number two, so we're trying to do two things at the same time. Eliminate the PSR backlog, But also we've almost quadrupled the number of PSR allocations. From the last year for the Conservatives, they only had 4,500 spaces for privately sponsored refugees. Guess how many spaces we've created? 16,000 every year. So what that will allow us to do is eliminate the backlog, but also continue to still bring people. With the specific caps for community sponsorship for the two groups, Iraqi and Syrian refugees, that is an approach that is supported by the Sponsorship Agreement Holder Council as the responsible thing to do, because we can't keep taking these applications when the backlog is still there. So we have to manage the two in a way that balances the need to process people who have been patient in line and still be able to process new cases, and that's why you have the 16,000 figure. Once we clear the backlog, we have a commitment that from then onwards, any sponsor who sponsors any refugee from anywhere in the world will be able to get that person or that family here in less than 12 months. And the way we're tracking, we're ahead of schedule. We have landed over 9,000, we've cleared over 9,000. Before the end of the year, we'll clear another 6,900 privately sponsored refugees. So going into next year, we'll be in a good place to continue to attack that backlog and finish it. One thing that's important about the backlog is the more you clear those cases, the more you free up resources and staff to land people faster moving forward. Finally, the final thing I'll say about PSRs is we are doing something else about that. We can't take everyone. So one of the things that Canada is doing quietly, unknown to a lot of people, is we're exporting the PSR model globally. No other country does PSRs the way we do. No one. And now, because of the fact that it's cheaper than the government-sponsored refugees, because the outcome is so much better, a lot of countries are coming to us and saying, show us how you do PSRs. So England, the UK, has moved beyond curiosity. They've actually just completed a pilot project, a couple of families. They're now moving to ramp up with more families. I hosted, about 2 months ago, ministers from a delegation from Argentina, Chile, and Brazil who are moving towards implementing PSR model. New Zealand, Australia, Germany, Sweden, and many other countries. And what they want from Canada is advice on how to implement that, but also capacity building, because they just don't know how to do it, and they may not, some of them don't have the capacity, and we're doing that. And so that's the thing that I'm most proud of, because through that PSR export, we will be able to massively increase the number of resettlement spaces for privately sponsored refugees across the world. And I think that's something that Canada can really be proud of. And the University of Ottawa is a partner with us in that effort.
Last question. Yep. When you look at gatherings like this and the town halls that you go to, and you balance that against policy, and you balance that against what's happening around the world, yep, what message do you want to leave the people gathered here with about why their work matters?
Your work matters because the research shows that when a family or a group of 5 sponsors one family or one refugee, they're profoundly affected by that experience, and they turn around and become even greater advocates for this model. And this model has just been so great for Canada. And again, the government of Canada cannot take credit for the private sponsorship of refugee model. It started spontaneously through the Vietnamese boat people. And I'm lucky that, that now we get to use this model, but it started from Canadians. And so this, the generosity has to be sustained, and that's why events like this show us that taking stock and realizing what individuals can do and have done and should continue to do builds that foundation and continues to insure us against future threats to traveling in the country. I don't just talk about economic immigration. I always make time to meet with refugee groups. And so, and that's why when I went to Surrey, BC, I met that young group of refugee youth. And they were very tough with me, and But ultimately what they asked me was, look, you've been through this, you know, are we ever gonna get out of this sort of difficult journey of integration? And I was able to look them in the eye and say, yes. And I was able to give them evidence. And then we broke the session and played soccer together, and they were like, this is amazing. So that kind of bonding, you know, because I could see myself in them. I could see what they're going through. I could see them trying to get integrated into the education system, trying to get a job, trying to reunite with their families and sponsor them, and how that has its own challenges. But I looked at them and said, you will be able to make it in Canada because Canadians are generous and your government wants you to succeed, and there are programs out there, and any challenges that you have can be dealt with by your resilience you got here, and by reaching out to mentors. You know, people will help you along the way, and don't be shy to ask for help and to get that hand up.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.